I wanted to demonstrate parenting layers in After Effects. So I've set up a little composition to demonstrate that. It's a little kind of robot character. He's got a single arm and he's also interacting with some flying saucers. So this is what it looks like. We've got a series of flying surfaces that will pop up from the bottom independently and then disappear as a group. And we've got a robot who's got a kind of an armature with an arm that kind of is hinged on at multiple points. And to create both of those animations, I use parenting. What parenting allows us to do is to use, is to link layers together so that we can use the animation from one layer to control animation in another layer or multiple layers, and we can chain link that as well. So we can have parents and the children can be parents as well. I suppose grandparents. Let's build this composition. I've got some assets for you to start with. If I tab over to Illustrator, you can see I've built the artwork here. I've got, if I just quickly look at the layers there, I've got one UFO which will duplicate a few times. I've got some eyes, a body and a head. I'm just going to flick them around so the head's at the top. You'll notice the head is actually in front of the body there. We'll fix that up later on. And we've got then a series of kind of arm elements and then a background. Let's save that, and I'm going to import that into a new After Effects composition. So we're back over in After Effects in a new project, and I've imported my robot AI layers as a composition, and I'll just open up that composition. We can see our layers have stacking as we expect. I'm just going to hide the UFO layer for a while, and we'll get back to the UFO and play with that in a little bit. I'm just going to make sure we're working in the animation workspace. That looks good. Okay, so the eyes. The eyes currently, we could have them animating backwards and forwards, kind of in this slot that the robot has for their eyes. So it was kind of designed so that they could look backwards, left and right, like so. And I want that to happen, but I want that to happen at the same time as the head is actually moving and rotating around the body. I can achieve that effect by parenting elements together. So what I'm going to do is I'll just have a look at the head and I'll pull down the rotation. I want the rotation of the head to rotate from the center point of the body here. So let's first of all set that up. I'm going to grab the pan behind tool and move the head's anchor point down here to around about the middle of the body. You can see that I've got my snapping turned off so that I can kind of place that wherever I need it. So if I rotate that head, you can see it kind of rotates how I want it, but the eyes are not connected. So let's parent those two elements together. I want to parent the eyes to the head. Now, we're going to need to open up a column. It's the parent and link column. If I right-click on this like little panel across the top here, it shows us the columns that are available to us. We want to make sure we have the parent and link column open. You might also have the modes open. This is quite handy actually because you can kind of shut down the columns that you don't need to use just to keep this area a little cleaner. You want to make sure that you have the right columns toggled open as well. So I've just got the parent link here at the moment because I don't need to track mat anything or use any blending modes. I just want to parent in this project. So I want to parent the eyes to the head, and I'm going to do that. I can go across to in the eye layer to the parent pull down, and I can select which element I want to parent to. In this instance, it's the head. Alright, now when I animate the head, the eyes are going to relate to the head. So if I now rotate my head element, you can see that the eyes do stick inside the head. I'll just undo that and get our head back at right angles. I might even undo that parent there, go back to none, and show you this little thing here called the pickwick. So instead of using this pull down menu to select an element that I want to be the parent, I can actually use this pickwick and drag this like little elastic interface element to the layer that I want to be the parent. Okay, so I've selected the head as the parent and the eyes are the children. So let me animate the eye position, and I'm going to add a keyframe around about close to the 1 second mark. And at the 1 second mark, I'm going to drag the X position property across to the right, so that you can see that these little eyes will kind of pan across. I'm going to copy those keyframes and paste them at around about 2, and right click on them, and I'm going to reverse those keyframes. Keyframe Assistant, time reverse keyframes, so that he looks back the other way. And then I'm going to copy these all the way down the timeline. We might actually bring the timeline in to around about 6 and pop those keyframes there. That looks good. Oh, don't need to save it, but I am going to preview that so we can see his little eyes moving backwards and forwards, which is cool. So we've got that eye animation, and that's independent from the head, but it's linked to the head. So when I rotate the head, and I might start with a rotation kind of like that, and then when he shifts his eyes, I might rotate the head that way. So that kind of looks good, and we'll go back the other way as well. And then I can copy those keyframes down here. So let's keyframe that. Preview that. Alright, that's looking good. And our eyes kind of sit within the animation of the head, which is pretty good. And that happens through a parenting relationship. Let's get a little bit more complicated with that. At some stage I might move the head behind the body just to fix up that little bit there, but I'm not going to do that at the moment. I need to parent all of these the 2 arm bits to the body, and I'm going to start with the upper arm, and I'm going to fix up their kind of their anchor points. So grab the pan behind tool and select the arm upper, and you'll notice that snapping's not selected there. And this is the point that I want to rotate that arm from. So you can see that that will rotate kind of on that hinge reasonably nicely. Maybe a bit more like that. I want to do that for the lower arm as well, kind of to be hinged here. You can see that they're all independent, and you can see how the parenting is going to connect these guys together, or these parts together. And then finally the hand with the pan behind tool needs to be hinged around about there. Let's just check that. So that looks reasonably good. Now, the upper arm needs to be parented to the body. So let's grab that Pickwick and parent to the body, like so. The lower arm needs to be parented to the upper arm, and then the hand needs to be parented to the lower arm. So now when I move the body, you can see the arm is connected to the body, and while we're here, we might just parent the head to the body as well. So you can see now when I move the body, the head moves with the body and the eyes move with the head, and the same thing happens with all of those armature parts. So I can then create an animation. I can rotate the upper arm. Let's keyframe that for about 1 second. And at the same time, I'm going to keyframe the lower parts of the arm. Oops, we'll add a keyframe first. And then the arm as well, other hand as well. Can't quite get to the rotate. Alright, so you can see that animation is all three elements of the arm, but because they're connected and parented to that hinging points, we can create that kind of armature effect where the layers are all linked together. So obviously that could be a little bit more complicated, and you should play around with that. Let me just show you another usage for the for parenting. So we're going to create a series of UFOs. I'm going to turn him on to start with. Maybe let's just change the scale a little bit so we can get a few of those. I'm going to do something like maybe just animate the opacity. So quickly fade in our flying saucer. So we're going to go from 0 opacity at this keyframe to 100%, like so. And we can close that up. So we've got a UFO with one animation on it, and I'm going to make a number of duplicates of that. Command D, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, and then I'm going to move those around in space using the Move tool. So one more. Alright, so that's all of our UFOs. I'm going to just drag the instances of these guys a little bit so that they appear one after each other. Maybe we'll take them all a little bit further away, something like that. So we've got 6 independent animations, and they all appear separately. Now, to make them move off to the right altogether, we could individually animate their position keyframe their position properties, and put like a series of keyframes on each of those layers. But we could parent all of these elements to something else and use that as a control layer. And the something else that we're going to use is what we call a null object. So it's a layer that exists, but it doesn't actually have any graphics. We just use it for instances, situations like this, where we use it to control other elements. We link things to it. So I'm going to grab all of those UFO layers and I'm going to pickwick them to the null, like so. So they're all going to be children of that null layer. And I might rename that UFO control, something like that. And then when I keyframe the position property of the null, so at about something like this, might easy ease those. You can see that they all are kind of connected to that null object. So the null doesn't look like anything, it's just a series of coordinates in space, and I can attach all of those children to the null and use it to control that animation. And one final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some motion blur to this animation. So I'm going to enable the motion blur button there, and then give all of my UFOs some motion blur. Oops. This is the motion blur. The motion blur enable button, and you can see now that my UFOs kind of have that blurry movement to them. Okay, so that was a look at using parenting or parenting layers in After Effects to create controlled animations where layers are linked to each other, to create more complex scenarios and situations.